6 foods, 3 drinks, no meat. That was the entire diet of the most dominant fighting force in human history, and he outperformed every modern soldier alive by every measurable endurance standard. The Roman legionary marched 20 miles a day carrying 60 pounds of gear, then dug a trench, built a wall, cooked dinner, and did it again tomorrow. He did this for 30 years. On a grocery list so simple a modern nutritionist would call it starvation. It was not starvation. It was an engineering system, and every ingredient is still sitting on your grocery store shelf right now. Here are the 6 foods and 3 drinks that built the Roman military machine, and why the modern MRE replaced them with something 5 times worse. The first food is pulse. Say it out loud and you can hear the word pulse inside it, because pulse is the original root of every grain-based peasant dish that ever came out of the Mediterranean. In Latin, it literally meant a cooked grain mash, and for the Roman soldier, it was the central calorie engine of his entire day. Each legionary received a daily grain ration that multiple ancient sources put at approximately 2 pounds of unground wheat, around 830 grams, a quantity confirmed by references in Polybius, Tacitus, and the Codex Theodosius. When the soldier was in his marching camp and had access to a millstone, he would grind that wheat himself, mix it with water, salt, a splash of olive oil, and sometimes a handful of legumes, and boil it in a bronze pot over a wood fire until it thickened into a hot savoury porridge. That was breakfast. That was dinner. That was roughly 2,300 calories per day from grain alone, almost entirely slow-burning complex carbohydrates. A 2001 analysis of the Roman legionaries' energy balance, published in the French medical literature, calculated that the legionaries' grain ration alone delivered around 3,500 calories when you add the bacon and cheese. The carbohydrate percentage of that diet ran near 78%. To a modern dietitian trained on the contemporary American plate, that ratio sounds catastrophic. To the Roman soldier carrying a full marching load across the Alps, it was exactly the fuel he needed. Slow carbohydrates, digested gradually, released energy at a steady rate over hours of exertion. No blood sugar crash, no mid-afternoon collapse, just a steady burn that kept him moving. The second food is Bucellatum, sometimes spelled Bucellatum, which was the portable version of pulse and the ancestor of every hardtack biscuit used by every army for the next 1800 years. When the legion was on the march and could not stop long enough to cook porridge, the soldier ate Bucellatum instead. The biscuit was made by mixing stone-ground wheat flour with salt and a small amount of water, kneading it into a stiff dough, shaping it into a dense flat round, and baking it twice, once at high temperature to cook it through, and once at low temperature to drive out every trace of remaining moisture. What came out was a brick-hard disc of pure carbohydrate with a shelf life measured in months. Bucellatum was literally the fuel that let the legion travel at speeds other armies could not match. A soldier could carry a week of ration biscuits in a leather satchel. He could walk all day eating one, soaking it in posca or broth to soften it, and his pace never dropped. The Emperor Trajan's column in Rome shows legionaries on campaign eating what are almost certainly hardtack biscuits. The Codex Theodosius, the Roman legal code from the 4th century, explicitly names Bucellatum as one of the standard field rations issued to troops on the move. This was not some emergency food. It was the official portable carbohydrate of the Roman military machine, and it worked well enough to outlast Rome itself. Every Navy ship's biscuit, every cowboy's trail bread, every soldier's hardtack all the way up to the American Civil War is a direct descendant. The third food is Lardum, which is the Latin word for salted pork fat, and sometimes more generally the word for preserved bacon. This is where the Roman diet stops looking like a monk's meal and starts looking like an engineer's solution to a calorie problem. The daily ration included around 100 grams, about 3.5 ounces, of Lardum per soldier. Fat delivers 9 calories per gram compared to 4 calories per gram for carbohydrate or protein. 100 grams of bacon fat is 900 calories of pure energy in a package small enough to fit in your palm. The Romans preserved lardum by salt curing and often smoking it, which gave it a shelf life of weeks even in warm weather. The fat melted into the pool's porridge, it was rubbed onto the hardtack to soften it, and it was eaten straight as a hand snack on the march. The Emperor Hadrian, who famously insisted on living like a common legionary during his tours of the frontier, reportedly told his officers that his favourite field meal was larido, casseo, et posca, bacon fat, cheese, and sour wine. That was the Emperor of Rome's comfort food, not peacock and honey, pork fat and vinegar water. The lesson in that is that the men who built the empire understood something modern nutrition spent decades trying to unlearn. Fat is not the enemy of human performance. It is the densest fuel a foot soldier can carry. The fourth food is caseus, which is simply hard cheese, and it served as the legionaries' concentrated protein supply. The daily ration appears in Roman military accounting at roughly 30 grams, just over an ounce, of aged sheep or goat cheese per soldier per day. That sounds tiny until you realise what aged hard cheese actually is. A wheel of Roman pecorino-style hard cheese concentrates the protein and fat of 10 to 12 litres of sheep's milk into a single pound, removes most of the water, and then ages for months until the protein becomes dense, digestible, and stable without refrigeration. 30 grams of that cheese is roughly equivalent in protein to a cup of fresh milk and has 10 times the shelf life. Paired with the grain ration, the cheese completed the amino acid profile that plant protein alone could not cover. A legionary eating the full ration was getting approximately 100 to 120 grams of protein per day, a figure that would make a modern gym bodybuilder nod in approval, achieved without a single protein powder, supplement, or factory-raised animal. The cheese was the quiet engine of muscle recovery. Without it, the grain diet would have been incomplete. With it, the soldier could do the same march the next day and the next. The fifth food is oleum, olive oil, which played the double role of cooking fat and preservative. The Roman military machine moved an extraordinary quantity of olive oil across the empire, and the archaeological evidence is undeniable. Monte Testaccio, a hill in Rome more than 120 feet, 36 meters high, is made entirely of broken amphorae, the ceramic shipping containers the Romans used to transport oil from Spain. Estimates by archaeologists like José María Blasquez place the total oil that passed through that hill at around 55 million amphorae over roughly 250 years, which works out to somewhere in the range of 6 billion litres of olive oil. A fraction of that went directly to legion supply depots. The soldier used it to fry his pools, to soften hardtack, to dress raw vegetables when he could forage them, to treat wounds and condition leather, and to preserve cheese and salt fish. The antioxidant profile of fresh olive oil, high in polyphenols and monounsaturated fats, gave the Roman diet a protective quality that modern nutritionists are still busy rediscovering as the so-called Mediterranean diet. The legionary was eating the Mediterranean diet before the marketing term existed. He was just doing it under duress, on schedule for the rest of his adult life. The sixth food is garum, and this is the one that shocks modern viewers the most when they first hear about it. Garum was a fermented fish sauce produced across the Roman world by packing layers of small fish, fish guts, and sea salt into open vats and letting them sit in the sun for weeks until enzymatic fermentation converted the whole mass into a thin, brown, intensely savoury liquid. That liquid is functionally identical to modern Southeast Asian fish sauces like Thai Nam Pla or Vietnamese Nuoc Mam. The Romans used it as their primary umami and salt flavouring on almost every meal. It was cheap, portable, shelf-stable for months, and packed with the amino acid glutamate, which triggers the same satiety signal in the brain as eating protein. A few spoonfuls of garum turned bland grain porridge into a meal the soldier would actually look forward to. It also provided sodium, critical for a soldier sweating through a marching day, in a digestible form that did not sit in his stomach like a brick of mineral. Garum factories have been excavated in Spain, North Africa, and the Black Sea, some of them industrial in scale, producing the sauce by the thousands of gallons to supply the legions. This was not an oddity. This was the condiment of the empire. And now the three drinks, because the Roman soldier did not drink plain water on campaign if he could avoid it, and the reason why is the most practical part of this entire investigation. The first and most important was posca, a mixture of water and cheap vinegar flavoured with whatever herbs were available. The soldier carried a small clay flask of it on his belt. Posca was slightly acidic, which killed most of the bacteria in the water he mixed it into, protecting him from the waterborne illnesses that killed more soldiers in every war until the 20th century than combat ever did. The acidity also suppressed the thirst response enough to stretch his water supply across a long march. The second drink was vinum, ordinary diluted wine, usually mixed with water at a ratio of 1 part wine to 2 or 3 parts water. The alcohol was low enough to avoid intoxication, but high enough to provide further antibacterial protection and a small dose of the phenolic compounds in grape skins. The third drink was acetum, the strongest sour wine, almost vinegar, reserved for cold weather or for moments of high exertion when the soldier needed a quick flavour jolt. Together, the three drinks formed a complete hydration system that killed pathogens, conserved water, and stretched the mental stamina of men who might not see fresh water for days. When you put all 6 foods and 3 drinks together, you are not looking at a list of items. You are looking at an integrated field nutrition system that delivered roughly 3,500 calories of high-quality fuel per day in a package that weighed under 4 pounds, about 1.8 kilograms, required no refrigeration, stayed edible for weeks, and could be cooked over any fire with nothing more than a bronze pot and a bone spoon. The modern MRE pouch system delivers around 1,250 calories per meal, weighs about 1.5 pounds, requires a flameless heater pack, comes wrapped in non-biodegradable plastic, and dumps around 11,000 milligrams of sodium into the soldier's bloodstream every day. Over a 30-day campaign, the modern system generates roughly 90 pounds of packaging waste per soldier. The Roman system generated an empty amphora and a clay pot that the soldier carried home with him. One of these systems conquered the Mediterranean basin. The other one cannot keep its troops from developing metabolic syndrome on base. So what happened to this diet? Why are American and European soldiers not eating some updated version of Poles and Bucellatum today? The answer is that somewhere in the 19th and early 20th centuries, the canning industry and later the ultra-processed food industry discovered that selling pre-cooked shelf-stable meals to armies was one of the most profitable contract categories in the entire defense budget. Real food made by the soldier himself on a fire generated no profit margin for any corporation. A plastic pouch of ultra-processed meat product did. The switch happened quietly, the nutritional science was written to justify it after the fact, and the soldier was told that the new system was advanced. It was not advanced. It was convenient for the supplier. The Legion had gotten along perfectly well for 7 centuries eating grain it cooked itself. If you want to experiment with this diet at home, and you should, because the ingredients are almost all still sold at any decent grocery store, here is the short version. For the grain base, use whole wheat berries or coarse cracked wheat, roughly 100 grams dry weight per meal, simmered in 3 times their volume of salted water for about 40 minutes until they break down into a porridge. Stir in a tablespoon of good olive oil, a slice of smoked bacon cut into small pieces, and a ½ ounce of aged hard cheese grated on top. For the drink, mix 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar into a full cup of cold water with a pinch of salt and a few crushed mint leaves. That is Posca, and it is genuinely refreshing once you get past the initial shock. For the portable version on a hike or long work day, make your own hardtack by combining 3 cups of whole wheat flour with 1 teaspoon of salt and enough water to form a stiff dough, rolling it out flat, cutting it into 3-inch squares, baking at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, 177 degrees Celsius, for 30 minutes, then reducing heat to 225 degrees Fahrenheit, 107 degrees Celsius, for another 2 hours to drive out moisture. The resulting biscuit will keep for a month in a dry tin. Eat one soaked in Posca or broth, and you are having lunch exactly the way a legionary on the road to Britannia had his. One honest remark. The Roman diet worked for men doing around 5,000 to 6,000 calories of physical labour a day. If you are sitting at a desk and you eat 2 pounds of wheat porridge on top of bacon and hard cheese, you will gain weight fast. Scale the portions down to your actual activity level. The principle to take from the Legion is not the exact quantity. The principle is the quality. Whole slow grain, aged protein, natural fat, fermented salt, and vinegar water. That combination carried the Roman military machine across 3 continents. It can carry you through a day of hard work on a farm or a job site without a single ultra-processed ingredient and without a single penny of your money going to a food corporation. Eat the way the men who built the aqueducts ate. You will be surprised how it makes you feel by the end of the first week. If this is the kind of real historical nutrition you want more of, smash that like button so the algorithm keeps pushing this to the next person stuck eating cardboard out of a pouch. Drop a comment with whether you are going to try Posca tomorrow morning. Honestly, it is the best place to start. And subscribe if you want the next investigation into the traditional diets that built the civilizations we still live in the shadow of today. We are bringing this knowledge back one video at a time, and every one of you watching is part of the reason it is coming back at all.